Welcome to Trials, Tales and Trails, a podcast for life sciences, healthcare and clinical trials. Our guests tell the tales, and trails we record from a Volkswagen camper van.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 3 of Trials, Tales and Trails. I'm Chris Wells, great to be with you. Joining me is Andy Thurston from the very cold north of England.
You're right, Chris. I'm here in the van. It's about -4, -5 where I am this morning. Sun's not up yet. It's pretty chilly, and I'm all wrapped up. Heater's not working, which is obviously, that makes a difference. So I'm going to let you. I'm going to let you introduce our superstar next guest.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, she really is a superstar. She's packed a lot into her lifetime so far. She's brings experience from multiple countries. She's a mother, a coach, an activist, an author, and a part-time dog walker as well. It's Catherine Canales.
Hello there. Here we are. We've got Catherine Canales on with us. I'm Andy Thurston. That over there is Chris Wells. Hi, everybody.
Hello, good morning. Hola, bonjour.
There we go. You see, that's a good way to segue into a quick introduction to Catherine. Catherine Canales is a businesswoman, a coach, mentor, a mother, an author, a campaigner, an advocate, and also a polyglot. Welcome to Trials, Tales and Trails, Catherine.
Thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here with both you and Chris today.
Great to have you on.
Thanks so much, Catherine. You must have the world's longest business card with all of those, that multitude of different kind of talents. The polyglot, though, how many languages do you speak out of interest?
I speak six languages. I'm fluent in 5, and I have a good in the 6th one. Let's put it that way. Do you want me to give you the details?
Well, it'd be good to know sort of which languages, yes, and sort of why, because, that's probably a big part of your story, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I was lucky I didn't have to, to learn each language on Duolingo. It's really part of my history. So I'm half Mexican, half German. I was born in Mexico. And then when I was 8 years old, my mother with my siblings, we moved to Rome. And I lived in Rome for another 8 years. And after that, we moved to the Geneva area. But first I lived in France, and I also went to university in France. And then I moved ultimately to Geneva full time. And Germany is where I spent all my childhood holidays. When you live in Southern Europe, and specifically in my case in Italy, in Rome, we used to have 4 months vacation per year. And summer holidays started mid-June until mid-September. And my mom, being a single mom, she didn't know what to do with us. So she would send us to Germany every summer and as many vacations as possible. So this is why I ended up spending quite a lot of time in Bavaria with my grandmother. So this is where all the languages come from. Yes.
Has the language thing then, has that had an influence on your career and how you got into life sciences?
Yes, actually, I was never meant to go into life sciences because I studied human sciences and philosophy. So when you study those subjects, you're not, planning to go into clinical research. But I started working at Eli Lilly when I was still finishing my university degrees, and it was supposed to be just a summer job. And the only reason they hired me is because I spoke German. And let me share something quite funny that that happened. So I think the first week when I joined Eli Lilly, they asked me to, take turns at the reception during lunch breaks. And a German speaker called and said, "Can I speak with someone from the oncology business unit?" And I started, looking at my notes, and I got really confused. And then I said in German, I'm so sorry. There's no Mr. Oncology working for this company. And then the CEO was passing, the general manager was just passing in front of the reception desk. And he grabbed the phone and he said, Catherine. And then this became a recurrent, I didn't lose my job, but this became a recurrent job. I said, Catherine, did you see Mr. Oncology? So just to tell you that, I didn't even know that, oncology was the equivalent of cancer. And but this was the beginning of a long journey working in the life sciences industry, and the summer job then became a permanent job. And I just have to say, it's funny where life sometimes takes you, right?
It really is. And I think, a good point in that. We all learn, right? You learn by making those kind of like faux pas, those mistakes that actually, once you've made that mistake, you don't make it again, do you? You go and find out everything about it. And I think it's a great little story. I know a little bit
Yes.
about you, and I know you're entrepreneurial now, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But you've always been a little bit of an entrepreneur, haven't you?
I've always, I think I have a very creative mind, and I'm very excited about finding different things of different ways of doing existing things, or different ways of creating, creating companies, ideas. It's something that I've always been super excited about. So the first one has been a salary negotiation practice that I founded 2 years ago already, and it's called NoGap. And it really started as, at the time I was doing my coaching certification, and and when you train as a coach, so you actually have to do coaching, you have to practice coaching. And there's a fair amount of coaching hours that you have to do. It's actually 60. And I just thought, Catherine, just create a framework. So rather than just doing like everyone, asking your friends and people who why don't you start building something around this, that because maybe it's going to take you somewhere. And this is how it all started. So I decided to focus on women in negotiation. First of all, because I learned so much through my business development journey when it comes down to negotiation. But also as a hiring manager, I observed how I really observed there's a huge difference, or huge. I observed a difference. Let's put it this way: how men and women negotiate when it comes to their not only their compensation, but in general. It really struck me when I started observing it as from the other side. And I decided, okay, this is something that has to be done, and I love to support women in just being more confident. And when it comes down to negotiating for their salaries, for the promotions, and it was the beginning of a fantastic journey, because I've been able to support so many women since then, and it also led me into doing workshops for negotiation. And now it's something that has really taken off, and it has just given me a lot of purpose. It's going to take 131 years to close the pay gap, but I think that everyone can be an actor now. So if every single woman actually negotiates better for themselves, this is going to have a ripple effect. So we cannot change society, but we can really change the way we approach negotiations at an individual level. And this is what I'm trying to do.
And Catherine, that is an absolutely frightening statistic, and some statistics you're better off not knowing. What do you kind of put to the forefront of what you look to teach others?
So my journey has been probably liberating myself from the patriarchy that I inherited from my Latin American culture, and then also moving into Italy. Those are cultures that are very patriarchal, and actually all cultures are very patriarchal, but I would say Latin America probably even more, and same for Italy. So what I had to do myself is to get rid of all these layers of bias that I inherited, and actually even training myself or becoming self-aware that the way I was looking at the world and the way I was looking at certain human interactions, they were actually very sexist. And I still sometimes, it's like, I tell myself, Catherine, like, be careful, this is sexist, the way you're looking at certain things. So, and I think all of us, because this is the framework in which we have been raised, this is the framework of society, we have to go through this awareness, or just realizing how we are influenced by culture, and it's a constant, it's constant work, constant self-awareness. Actually,
you look at the healthcare sector of how one-sided things tend to be still, even in clinical research, how the bias in test subjects, there's a long way to go. But it is refreshing in terms of, the younger generations seem to be a little bit more kind of open to it.
I think things are definitely changing, but we need to continue having these dialogues. And this is why I think it's so important to speak up, to share, to share the experiences that we go through, to share, yesterday, for example, I attended the healthcare, the health gender summit in Basel that was organized by the Healthcare Business Women Association. And there were a lot of discussions about how can we actually share more information and increase the self-awareness, because there's, I don't think we're talking enough about this. One of the very, something that it's really scary if you think the patient subject is, how can I put it? The reference patient subject is a white Caucasian male. And the consequences of that is that the drugs that are in the market have been only made for a certain population. So what happened with other races? What happened with women? So I'm very hopeful, sorry, that things are going to change with the new generation. And I think lots of things that we accepted, and they will not accept. I have 3 sons. My 16-year-old came home with one of his girlfriends from school. And they said, Catherine, we need to talk to you about something. Today, the school director stopped in the corridors one of the students who was next to his girlfriend. And the director told the young man, can you talk to your girlfriend? This is not an appropriate way to dress up to come to school. And what I found fantastic, obviously that is so wrong at so many levels, but what I found fantastic is that they all came to talk to me, and I said, we need to do something. This is not acceptable. And the guy said, it's why is he talking to me when he has an issue with the way she dresses? This is so condescending. This is so sexist. So just the fact that they actually, that they were shocked by this situation, for me, it's just such a massive advancement. And it's like, okay, yes, we're going in the right direction, because they're the ones who are going to challenge things in the future, and who are going to speak up, and who are not just going to take things, just accept this type of behavior. So it really gives me hope.
The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, Catherine. Would you be able to share the story of a young 10-year-old Catherine who also at that time was kind of keen to challenge the conventional and start something new up?
So as I mentioned earlier, from a very young age, I wanted to have a business, and I wanted to earn money. So I thought, okay, what can you do as a 10-year-old? At the time, I came about the idea of let me propose my services as a dog sitter. So I draw myself some flyers with Snoopy jumping, and I put my rates. And I still remember it was 1 hour, 1,000 lira, which is 50 cents. It's half a euro right now, So very, very cheap. And then I went to see all the shops in the neighborhood, and I asked them whether they would accept that I put my flyer in, in their windows, and I put our home number. And then what happened next is that we got so many bizarre phone calls. My mom actually was answering the phone, and then she was mortified. It's like, Catherine, what have you done? There's all these guys asking whether you can walk their dog. But what happened next was very funny, because I got contacted by La Repubblica, which is one of the big newspapers in Italy, and they invited me to do an interview. And I'm still trying to find actually the original. I still have the paperclip, but they did an article, like a full page, Catherine, so in Italian, Caterina, 10 years old, little entrepreneur. And that led actually to another very cool thing. I was invited to do an interview in live television in a Sunday show, like one of those. I don't watch TV anymore, but every country have their afternoon Sunday shows. So they invited me, and I remember very little, to be honest with you. And I'd love to find the clip. I actually should try to find it. But they interviewed me about my love for dogs. And between you and I didn't do this for the love of dogs. I did it because I wanted to earn money to buy Christmas presents. That was the whole goal.
Did you actually say that on the TV though? Like, forget the dogs.
So.
It's nothing to do with the dogs. It's about the dough.
Exactly.
I love it.
I don't know. Maybe I did it. I don't remember what I said, but I think I was very, very, very transparent. Probably the biggest lesson is that you never know where things take you. When you start an entrepreneurial journey, it's so important to put yourself out there.
And to Catherine, it's funny actually. Like, shout out to Kate, who was one of our other earlier kind of podcast guests. Talked about, when one door closes, others open, and really, like in life, you've got to embrace every opportunity, because you don't know where it's going to take you. All three of us have gone into the healthcare sector. We never set off on that pathway at the very start, but it's situations and experiences have kind of brought us to where we are now. So
Absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely. And say yes to everything. This is the main difference, if I can say something, the main difference one of the difference that I observe between men and women, especially when it comes to careers. I don't know if you're aware of that, but usually men, they apply to jobs if they see an advertisement and they see, okay, I meet 50% of the criteria, even less, 40%. Let's go for it. I'm going to try, let's see, and they apply. Women, unless they have 90% plus, they don't apply for the job because they're waiting for everything to be perfect. And this is what I tell women: just go for it, just dare.
You mentioned obviously your work with the Healthcare Business Women's Association. You mentioned your work with coaching women in terms of pay equity. Now, that's obviously not just come from nowhere, right? You're involved in this, and talking about somebody putting yourself out there. One of your next projects, and I believe ongoing, is that you're writing a book about sexism in the workplace, or is it just casual sexism generally?
It is specifically in the workplace. Yes, it's casual sexism in the workplace. And of course, sexism is everywhere. But I decided to use the angle of the workplace because from all the stories that I've been hearing, that I witnessed, I thought it was important to initiate a dialogue and to start talking about it more openly, because it's still happening everywhere. And sometimes actually the companies are not able to protect the victims. They make the choice to protect the perpetrator.
I believe that you've been speaking to women, men, you've been speaking to people that have actually experienced this firsthand, and it'd be interesting, if you can, maybe bring out a few examples. I've got one that I want to share with you, but maybe you can perhaps give us a little bit of maybe stories, things that you might have come across in researching for your book.
So over the last 2 to 3 months, I've been discussing with men and women in different industries, not only in the life sciences industries, because I was trying to have a broader perspective, and whoever reached out to me wanted to share their stories. I was very grateful for that. So different industries, different levels of careers. and also, of course, different locations. So I've been speaking with people in Asia, people in Europe, in the US, and it's been, I cannot say it's been eye-opening. Actually, it's been worse than what I expected. Let me put it this way. It was eye-opening. I knew that sexism was in the workplace was a big thing, but when I started talking to women and men as well, I discussed with a few men. It was yes, it was terrifying. It was terrifying because I realized that there's a lot of regrets, and a lot of stories. Like, how can I put it? People who reach out to me, they often have stories that they've been, carrying for so many years. So sometimes it's situations, things that happened 10, 20 years ago, but it's something that it's still, it's still affecting them. And there's a lot of regret because they didn't speak up at the time. Right. And the other stories that I've been hearing is women who spoke up and then suffered the consequences. Actually, I have yet to speak to someone who said she spoke up and there were no consequences. It was like every single time, sooner or later, they were either, moved into a corner and they had to leave the company because their career was over, or after a certain amount of time, they were just made redundant. There are sometimes it's more, casual sexism about jokes or, unsolicited sexual advancements. But I heard some more tragic stories that had a devastating impact on women's careers. So it's been, it's been quite a journey, and I'm not done interviewing. I'm speaking every week to 3 to 4 people. And my goal is to share the stories and share, parts of the story, but most importantly, give women a framework, and men and everyone, on how to behave. Because the number one thing that I heard is that whenever there were this casual sexism situations, 99% of the time people freeze.
Right.
Because they don't know how to behave. They don't know how to respond. And it happened to me too. You're like, excuse me, you're so actually not expecting it that you just freeze. So you let it pass, and then some women, yes, some people speak up at a later stage, and some others they don't because they think it's too late. I didn't, and then they start carrying this, and they start carrying multiple episodes like this, throughout their career. And I think the danger is that we're talking about casual sexism. And this is a very dangerous zone because it is, it's not sexual assault. So it's very, very easy to dismiss it. It's like, it's not a big deal. He was just joking. That's the way he is. So there's a tendency, it's very, very easy to just ignore it and move on. But it is, you would never get away, or I hope you would never get away making a racist joke in the workplace. Actually, you would be held accountable. So I hope in the majority of the cases. So why is it that people are just, accepting this as part of being in the workplace? And again, there are different levels of sexism. There are different companies, different contexts. So all of this has to be taken into consideration. But I think the sexual jokes, this is probably the sexual advancements said in a funny way, or trying to be funny. And I heard stories of women, especially in business development, because somehow there's the expectation that because we're trying to do business, that we are desperate and we're willing to do whatever it takes to win the deal. And there's a lot of there's a lot of stories that I heard and that I experienced myself when, the client was trying to use this the business framework to get something more out of the deal. And that's wrong at so many levels. Right. And
absolutely.
I've seen women, who were given, instead of a business card, a hotel room key. So that came up a few times. Women who were called, and that happened to me at the beginning of my career, when I was literally, someone called my hotel room at 3 a.m. suggesting that I should join the person.
I can give you an example. I'll give you an example quickly, that an associate of mine, a colleague of my wife, told us about that happened this year. And she was at an industry event, and one of the, I guess, VIPs you would call in that company, was kind of beckoning this lady to the dance floor. Everybody obviously wears lanyards at these conferences and meetings, and he came forward, took hold of her lanyard, and then ran his hands down over her breasts. And she obviously sort of recoiled, stood back, froze, as you said, and then kind of took herself away from the situation. Was thinking about it, and sort of said to one of her colleagues, "Hey, this is what just happened." This colleague, who was a younger colleague of hers, said, "He just did that to me 5 minutes ago." So she actually reported it to her company, who took the kind of view of, you sure this happened? Was it just not an accident? And she said, "Listen, I wouldn't have reported it if it was just me. I probably wouldn't have. I would have thought that maybe it was a one-off. But the fact that he actually did the same thing to a younger colleague is what's made me come forward." And their answer was, "Hey, look, this is our biggest client, and he's really important in our client. He's a really important individual. Do we really want to rock the boat?" She insisted, and so they brought this grievance up with the client. The client took months to get back to them, and when this individual actually spoke to the client's HR representatives, the feedback was, "It's not a surprise that it's him. That's just him. That's just what he's like." So far as I understand, there's been no further action, and this individual was put into a very difficult situation not so long ago, by saying that her next business trip was actually going to be in the presence of the perpetrator.
Now, that's a terrible story, and very similar to the ones that I've been hearing. And the problem is that not only the company didn't do their proper duty of care, because we should all be in a safe environment, and this is the company's responsibility. So after the moment she spoke up, they should have taken the right steps. And we don't
Yeah.
care if this is the biggest client. I mean, it's not acceptable to behave this way. And same on the client side. The fact just saying, it's even worse, the fact that they said, "Oh, we know about this." That means that they have allowed
Yeah.
the situation to happen. So what are they waiting to do something? And to,
Yeah. And it's obviously not the first time, right?
it was not the first time. So what they said is even makes the whole story even worse, because it means that they were aware of that. I had a conversation maybe 2 weeks ago with a lady. She was working in our industry, and it was a chief medical officer in her company. And again, very inappropriate. And they told her, this is the way it is. We know this, he's like this, but we're not going to change him. And he's way too senior and way too important in the company. So we cannot take any actions. That man behaves like a predator. And so how often is he doing? And we don't even know to what extent, maybe because if you are a younger woman in this industry, and, if you are, especially if you have a commercial role, sometimes, you feel very insecure. You don't know the way you behave. You accept certain things that you would never accept because you feel under pressure. So it's so important to speak up, because you're making, you have to stop the chain of abuse. And if you don't, it will just continue. I've spoken with women at a very high level, very senior level. They had managing big teams, and they found it so challenging for them to be heard, for the grievances to be taken seriously. So can you imagine, again, going back to, younger women, how they must feel, and how difficult it is for them to speak up if every single time you face obstacles, and you're treated like you have a mental problem. It's like, or that you are being difficult, or that you're being, oh, why are you making such a big story out of? So it becomes a you problem because you are highlighting an issue that you shouldn't be facing these situations in the workplace, but you are the one who has an issue. It's not the other. It's not the other person.
But if they're turning a blind eye because that person, they've just got a track record of doing it, that person's never going to improve as a human being until they're forced to face the music with it. So
absolutely.
A lot needs to change.
And Andy and I, we witnessed one of those situations at one of the conferences that we attended every year. There was an individual that was openly being extremely inappropriate to women in the conference. But women were very uncomfortable by that. And what did the chair of the conference do? He actually called out the person. He's like, "Hey, can you please stop harassing the ladies?" And then everyone laughed. And that was it. But it was like, this was like something that was visible to everyone, that every year he would come back and behave in a very inappropriate way. And everyone was laughing about this. How come that individual, every year we had to observe how he was, harassing women? It has to start just by calling people out. Sometimes it's just calling out the person so that he or she, because even, women who make sexist can realize that this is inappropriate. And something very, one of my go-to sentences is either asking the person, "Excuse me, can you repeat that again?" And that creates it stops, you stop. And then when the person has to repeat it, usually they already like, "Oh, excuse me, no, I realized that was not appropriate." So usually that gives the other person the opportunity to just be conscious about what he or she have just said. So just, you were asking me about advice that I give, is like A, asking to repeat, or B, is like, "I'm sorry, I'm confused. Why do you think this is an appropriate thing to say?" And then ask, and then hear the answer. And then usually this helps them just to realize, and it stops, it creates like a pause that is so important. So for people to become aware of what has been said. So, and the third one that I sometimes use when someone says something very, very appropriate, I said, I'm sorry, this is so inappropriate. I cannot even comment on that. But sometimes it's just giving people the option just to become self-aware. And I think this is what is going to, this is what is going to change and move the needle. If every single time we hear something that is inappropriate, that is sexist, just, okay, let's acknowledge that. I want to give you another example. And this is actually one of our male colleagues who reached out to me, and he mentioned that he was again at a conference, and he observed one of the speakers, that he was constantly trying to touch one of his colleagues. So they were sitting they were sitting in a bar, and the guy would come and put his hands, behind her back or around her, and she was very uncomfortable. So she was trying to wiggle so that he would move. And what was very interesting about this is that when we had this conversation, I asked him, "So what did you do?" And he looked at me like blankly in the eyes, and he said, "Catherine, you're right. I didn't do anything." But he didn't even think, this is what's so interesting. It's like he reached out to me to tell the story. But when this happened, he didn't even think that he could have said or done something.
Yeah.
And just by saying, "Hey, mate, I mean, do you mind just putting your hands out of her? I don't think, I think you're making her feel very uncomfortable." Because, and this is why it's so important. Everyone, not just men, women, every time we observe something, just do something about it. Say something about this. Yes, speak up. And it doesn't have to be, again, it doesn't have to, you don't have to start shouting, "Hey, what have you done?"
Yeah, call the police.
Hey, yes, hey, what, I mean, have you noticed? Do you see how you're making her feel? And if you say that, then we give everyone an opportunity to be more aware and to have a better level of consciousness of what is happening.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that people are, just going around trying to be sexist. I think there's,
Right.
again, all this baggage, everything that we have inherited, everything that is in our culture as well. If you look at movies, if you look at pop culture, it's very sexist. There are so many sexist references. So we're just reproducing the framework in which we've been raised.
I totally agree. And I think, the very fact that it was made into a joke at the conference when, and it's really difficult because certainly from the male perspective, as you get older, and certainly for me, once I actually when I had 2 daughters, the mindset completely switches. And I think this is society actually. When you're younger, in sports clubs and stuff, it is this kind of macho bravado to find certain things funny. But every victim is someone's sister or someone's daughter. And you just,
Right.
and actually I think age has taught me that. It gives you a different perspective. We have to stop and think what the consequences will be to people, even with these little casual comments.
Yeah.
As you said, Catherine, racism has had so much focus, and with every generation, certain things seem to be confined to history forever. But with gender equality, we're nowhere near that yet. Look at the pay disparity and so on. We've got so much more still to come, so much that's got to be fought.
Yes, and having those conversations and increasing the level of awareness, and then act at the level that you can. We are acting now because we are spreading the message. We're helping other people become more aware of this. And hopefully, the little tricks that I gave, I hope that they can help some women and some allies that next time they observe something, they just take upon themselves to say something. Challenge, don't take no as an answer. And, I've seen situations when someone went to HR and someone went to see his manager, and the manager said, "Oh, thanks God you didn't go to HR. So just take it to HR yourself." It's like, so because, and also people are uncomfortable with conflict, and this is why this is so complex.
Tell us a little bit about your book and sort of, what I believe it's called. Is it called That's Not Funny, It's Sexist? Is that?
It's not funny, it's sexist. Yes. And I decided to call it this way because the number one excuse for people being sexist is that they're making jokes. And they said, "Hey, relax. I was just joking." It's just, and it's true. There are lots of sexual jokes, but I think that it's just too easy to get away with. I was just joking.
Yeah.
So I wanted to call upon that. And what I decided to do is just, as many women throughout my career, I observed so much sexism in the workplace, and at the individual levels, but also, attending events, working with other people. And I just, it got me curious about, okay, what is really happening out there? So I asked for testimonials on LinkedIn. And I would have never thought, that so many people would contact me. So my goal with the book is to make it very actionable in a way that giving everyone, a framework on what to do, what to react, and again, doing it in a non-confrontational way, so that to allow people to just be more aware of this and also tune their ears. It's not easy, and but we have to start somewhere, and this is where I think that at an individual level you can make an impact.
When's the book due to be out, Catherine?
So my goal is to be able to finish it by the end of Q1, and
2024.
So yes, 2024.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Only saying that so people listening to the podcast in like a few years' time might be able to go and pick this up in their local bookshop or online or wherever. Or feels like a good time to ask the previous guest, Ray Collier. We always get the previous guest to ask a question for the next guest, and we'll do that with you in a moment. But he asked if you could go back and speak to yourself at sort of age 15, 16, and you could do maybe things different, or you could give yourself a piece of advice to do things differently. What would you say and what would you do, I guess?
Probably the biggest one is that to be more comfortable about being who I am, we have those role models, or we have those people that we want to be like them, or act like them, or speak like them. And I think that puts so much pressure on us. And the moment that I realized that I'm just who I am, and this is my story, and these are my flaws, and this is it. This is Catherine, and that's and you can only be Catherine because everyone else is taken, and you have taken Catherine's role. And the moment I just got, that pressure is like, I don't have to keep trying being someone who I'm not. That was so liberating. And maybe not everyone is going to like me, and not everyone is going to, appreciate the way I am, but that's okay. They're not my tribe. They're not my people. But when you try to please everyone, you lose yourself. So I think that we all go through life, and especially women, where we are just, trying to pretend to be someone else, and we act that way, and we show up that way, but we lose ourselves in the process. So this is why it's like, okay, you see is what you get, and it may not be, it may not resonate with you, and that's perfectly fine. And so that's probably, it took me a lot of years just to realize that it was okay also to be different, because the fact that I grew in so many different countries, that I have this multicultural background, at the same time, it created like identity problems. If you ask me where I'm coming from, I cannot answer that question. I am Mexican, yes, but I only lived in Mexico for 8 years, and then I moved to Italy, and I was, so much of the Italian culture impacted me. And then moving into France, and now in Switzerland, I've been in Switzerland for so many years, and again the influence from Germany. So I don't know who I am. If you ask me, culturally speaking, I'm a little bit of everything, and even my name. It depending, in Mexico they say Catarina, in Italy they say Caterina, in the UK or English speakers is Catherine, and then Catherine. So I don't have a name that is consistent. But so it creates like, yes, it took me a lot of time to just say it's okay to be different. This has been really the moment where I guess I just offloaded so much weight from my shoulders.
And so, have you managed to think of a question for our next guest?
Yes. We were talking earlier about my childhood, and how actually what really matters to me now, and what is at the core of who I am professionally and personally. And again, because both are, I don't think we're two separate people, work and life. I think that where everything blends, everything should blend somehow. And we discuss about how this entrepreneurship was there at a very young age, and I don't know how, because my father was a photographer and my mom was a model. So I don't know how this came up very strongly in my career. But I'm curious about the next guest, if they can think about their own childhood, and usually, what I learned is that if you look back at when you were 10, 11 years old, and what you were extremely passionate about, you have some, actually, that gives you some how can I say, some an indication on what you're going to excel in the future. And I don't know, I'm curious about maybe you, Chris and Andy, is there anything just because before becoming teenagers that was there, and that later on actually flourished in your adulthood? So I'm always very curious to hear what was there in your early years, and so that's my question. I don't know if it makes sense.
No, totally.
It does. Yeah.
It's what fueled your fire from a very young age to help you succeed, the stuff you've done all the way through your life. And the biggest question, I think, when our audience listens to this, there's still one thing for you, Catherine, still to be done, and that's the dog walking services. So
the dog
we just
walking.
need to We need to make that happen somehow.
I was going to say, you're talking about walking. You're doing some sort of a bit of a big walk, or is it a run? It's a race, isn't it? Next year?
So it's supposed to be a race, a run. Let's see how much I can actually run. But yes, it's something that I've been putting off for many years, because in 2020, I signed to a 100-mile race in Mongolia. It's not done over one day. So it's 4 consecutive days that you run on a frozen lake in northern Mongolia. So I guess it's pretty much how you're feeling now. Well, Andy, it's minus 40 degrees. It's not minus 5.
Minus 40. And, I'm just at minus 4 and I'm...
Yes. Ooh. So I signed up in 2020 and I was ready to leave in February 2020. Then obviously it got cancelled. And it's something that I've been it was cancelled also 2021. In 2022, I was absolutely not fit. 2023, I was like, no way. And now I'm not fit, but I'm going to do it anyway because I cannot postpone it any further. So we are heading to Mongolia end of February, and we're going to race those 100 miles, and we're raising money for pediatric cancer for that. So I'm going to be communicating about that. If people want to donate something, it's for the good cause. And yes, and it's going to be quite an adventure. So I look forward to sharing more and yes, and finally doing it after 4 years.
Oh yeah, well, let us know the link. We'll share that as well to our audience, and then hopefully, we get some more sponsors, and they can follow your story from afar. Looking forward to hearing more about that, Catherine, and looking forward to your book. Obviously,
thank you.
It's fantastic to hear your story. Thanks for sharing some of the stories of people that you've talked to in a sensitive way. Giving us constructive tips, I think, of how to speak up, to challenge things that we experience that we don't think is appropriate and we don't think is right. I think those are really good tips. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today, Chris, and I really appreciate you joining us today. And as I say, thanks again for taking the time,
Thank you
Catherine.
to both. Andy, you're probably one of the people in the industry that I've known the longest. I don't know how many years, but it's been, I guess it's been 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. So you're like my...
It's definitely like teens.
Long? No, we're not that old. It was like, right? But it's been... But it's been a long time.
I met you when I was in school, right? So
yes,
still
and
young,
right? I was still walking dogs. Exactly. Trying to walk dogs. But no, it's been such a pleasure, and I really appreciate the opportunity to for me to share my stories and also to share the different initiatives that I'm currently contributing, and I hope that it's going to raise awareness and yes, get conversations. Give people that are the opportunity to start talking about this and not to shy away from the difficult conversations. It can make such an impact. So use your voice. That's maybe my call to action.
Use your voice.
Use your voice for everything. Things even that we have not discussed about this today. So everything that matters to you, use your voice. And the framework that I gave you, the little sentences, they can be used for anything. When you're seeing something with social injustice, just use it.
Brilliant, Catherine. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us.
It was a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, and please get in touch with feedback, suggestions for future guests, or to inquire about sponsorship opportunities. You can subscribe using your go-to podcast provider or follow at trialstalesandtrails.com. On behalf of all participants, views expressed are our own and not necessarily those of our employers, past, present or future. Trials, Tales and Trails was written by Andy Thurston and Chris Wells and produced by Andy Thurston.